She was a young veterinary doctor on her way home. Alone, late, and unaware she was being watched. What began as a routine evening in Hyderabad quickly spiraled into a national tragedy. Dr. Shalini Mehra vanished near a toll plaza, only to be found the next day, her life violently cut short. The brutality of the crime shocked the country. The suspects were arrested within days. But before a trial could begin, they were killed in a police encounter that split public opinion and blurred the line between justice and vengeance. This is not just a story of a crime, it's a story of what followed, of protests, pressure, and a system forced to confront its own failures. It's about a country caught between its demand for swift justice and the cost of bypassing the law to get it. What happened in those final hours, and in the days after, still haunts the institutions that were meant to protect her. This is the story of Dr. Shalini Mehra, and the case that tested the very meaning of justice in modern India. Welcome to the Crime Series. I am glad to have you join us on another video. Kindly subscribe, like, and share. Let me know where you are watching from. Before the headlines. Before the protests and the burning questions of justice, there was just Shalini, a girl with big eyes, a quiet voice, and a world she was still trying to understand. Shalini Mehra was born on a humid July morning in 1993 in the small town of Hanamkonda, just outside Warangal, in the heart of Telangana. Her family lived in a modest government housing colony, where the rhythm of life was steady, slow, and deeply rooted in routine. Her father, Rajiv Mehra, worked as the principal of a local government high school. Her mother, Kavita, taught Hindi literature at a nearby girls' college. Education was not just encouraged in their home, it was expected. Books lined every wall, and dinner table conversations often drifted into politics, poetry, and values. Shalini was the younger of two sisters. Her elder sibling Shruti was the outgoing one, the debater, the performer, the center of attention. Shalini, on the other hand, stayed in the background. Observant, reserved. She listened more than she spoke. Teachers called her the gentle one. She never raised her hand in class unless she was sure of the answer. But what she lacked in volume, she made up for in determination. Even as a child, she had a love for animals that set her apart. While other kids played games after school, Shalini could often be found near the colony's stray dogs, feeding them biscuits from her lunchbox or bandaging small wounds with gauze from her father's medicine cabinet. She once stayed up all night nursing a dying sparrow, tears in her eyes when it passed at dawn. Her mother sometimes worried she was too soft for the world. Her father believed otherwise. Rajiv saw something else in his younger daughter: resilience. It was quiet but unwavering. When she set her sights on something, she pursued it methodically. In middle school, after a class trip to a farm, Shalini declared that she wanted to work with animals, not as a zookeeper or trainer, but as someone who could heal them. The idea of veterinary science took root early. As she entered her teenage years, life at home remained stable, but not untouched by hardship. The family faced financial strain after her father's retirement came earlier than expected due to a health scare. With reduced income, the pressure on both daughters to succeed academically intensified. Shruti pursued commerce. Shalini doubled down on biology. She didn't go to coaching centers or elite prep schools. She studied under the dim light of a shared bedroom, borrowed books from seniors, and often stayed late after school for extra lab sessions. Her teachers took notice. So did her neighbors, who often whispered that the quiet Mehra girl was going to make something of herself. And she did. In her final year of high school, Shalini secured a state-level scholarship, beating odds stacked high against her. Her admission into one of Hyderabad's veterinary science colleges was more than an academic achievement. It was the culmination of years of quiet grit and unspoken sacrifices. At her farewell ceremony in Warangal, her father gave a short speech. He said only one thing: Shalini doesn't talk much, but she listens, she learns, and she never gives up. That's her voice. From that day on, she began carving her path, not loudly, but with purpose. It was a Wednesday evening in late November. Calm, cool, and ordinary in the city of Hyderabad, when 26-year-old Dr. Shalini Mehra, a young veterinary doctor, wrapped up her shift at a well-known clinic in Gachibowli. Shalini lived alone in a shared apartment and had gradually grown comfortable navigating city life on her own. But even in her independence, she remained someone who overthought unfamiliar situations, a part of her personality that made her hesitant, careful, and sometimes vulnerable. That night, she decided to stop by a salon near Samruddhi Toll Plaza, not far from the highway, to prepare for an online conference she had scheduled the next morning. She parked her red Activa scooter in a commonly used open space near the toll gate, an area that always grew dark and quiet after sunset. What Shalini didn't know was that 4 men had been watching her. Pretending to fix a motorcycle tire nearby, they waited as she walked away toward the salon. Their plan had already taken shape. Each of these men had a name, a past, and a path that led them here, but none were paths of redemption. Vikram Reddy, 24, was a lorry cleaner with no formal education. Raised in a broken home where alcohol and violence were normal, he had dropped out of school early and had a string of petty crimes behind him. Sandeep Yadav, 20, was training to be a driver. Though quiet in manner, he was known in his neighborhood for troubling women and stirring up fights with little provocation. He wore respectability like a disguise. Arjun Thakur, 19, was the youngest. Easily influenced and eager to belong, he followed Vikram like a shadow. His mother worked as a cleaner, and his father had disappeared into the prison system years ago. He never learned to say no to anyone older, especially not to men like Vikram or Mahesh. Mahesh Kumar, 26, was the oldest and most dominant. He had no steady job, but he knew how to manipulate people and situations. With a criminal history riddled with unexplained police complaints, he had long resented confident, educated women. That resentment ran deep. When Shalini returned to her scooter after her appointment, she found the back tire flat. It startled her. She glanced around. No one she knew, no nearby help, and her phone battery had died hours earlier. A small, frustrating problem became a moment of fear. The men approached. Mahesh, in his most polished voice, offered to assist. Shalini hesitated. Everything in her told her to decline. She considered walking to the nearby fuel station to borrow a phone or ask for help, but she didn't want to leave her scooter behind. That pause, just seconds long, changed everything. Before she could act, the men surrounded her. In one sudden move, they dragged her toward a lorry parked behind a line of trucks. She struggled, but the area was isolated, and it all happened too fast. The vehicle started and drove off, disappearing into the night. Back in Warangal, her family waited for her routine call. Her sister Shruti tried calling again and again, but the phone only rang before going dead. She assumed it was just a signal issue or low battery. But by midnight, the anxiety had turned into dread. That final call never came. If you found this story compelling and appreciate the way we bring real-life cases to you, hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications so you never miss an update. Your support helps us continue to uncover the truth and share these important stories. Like, share, and let us know your thoughts in the comments below. Let's keep the conversation going. What unfolded over the next few hours would go far beyond one missing woman. It would become a national outrage. It would expose dangerous gaps in public safety, and it would raise a question that too many families in India had already asked. How could this happen again? Morning broke quietly over Shadnagar, a sleepy town on the outskirts of Hyderabad, on November 28, 2019. The sky was still streaked with orange when a thin trail of smoke began to rise from a patch of wasteland beneath a highway overpass. Ravindra Chauhan, a lorry driver en route to a nearby depot, noticed the smoke as he pulled over to relieve himself. The smell was sharp, burnt plastic, rubber, and something else. Something unmistakably human. Curious but cautious, he stepped off the roadside and walked toward the smoke. What he saw stopped him cold. In a shallow ditch surrounded by blackened soil and stone lay a charred body, partially wrapped in a fire-damaged blanket. The flames had done their work. Skin, clothing, even the hair had been destroyed. A melted slipper lay nearby, fused to a rock. Ravindra turned and ran to the highway, waving down a police patrol. By 7:30 a.m., officers from Shadnagar police station had sealed off the area. Forensic teams from Cyberabad arrived soon after, examining the scene carefully. A plastic bottle with fuel residue was recovered. The blanket seemed to have come from a vehicle, possibly a long-haul truck. The intent was clear. Someone had tried to erase every trace, but not everything had burned. A shattered phone screen, scorched at the edges, was found in the bushes a few feet away. Though the heat had damaged it severely, police believed it once belonged to the body that was found. Meanwhile, in the police station, a missing persons report had just come in. The family of Dr. Shalini Mehra, a 26-year-old veterinary doctor from Warangal, had reported that she never returned from work the previous night. Her phone had been unreachable. Her last known location was a toll plaza near Shamshabad. Police pulled CCTV footage from the Samruddhi Toll Plaza, a rest stop frequently used by commuters and heavy vehicle operators. At exactly 9:15 p.m. the night before, the footage showed Shalini parking her red scooter and walking toward a nearby salon. At 9:40 p.m., 4 men were seen standing beside her scooter, appearing to tamper with the rear tire. After that, Shalini never appeared on camera again. Investigators began cross-referencing her movements with the location where the body had been found. The distance, less than 30 kilometers. The timeline matched. The circumstances were chilling. Later that afternoon, Shalini's parents, Rajiv and Kavita Mehra, along with her sister Shruti, were asked to come to the Shadnagar police station. Officers spoke with quiet caution. The body could not be identified visually, but circumstantial evidence pointed to the worst. Shruti, sobbing, recognized the partially melted slipper and confirmed it matched a pair her sister had recently bought. The phone, though mangled, had the same case Shalini had used. A DNA test was ordered for confirmation. In the meantime, the police upgraded the case to abduction and suspected homicide. Shalini's mother stared straight ahead, silent. Her father sat slumped, holding his glasses in one hand, unsure whether to wear them or wipe the fog from the lenses. And Shruti, clutching a photograph of her sister, whispered, "She always came home, she always called." By the morning of November 29th, less than 48 hours after Dr. Shalini Mehra vanished from the toll plaza, the investigation had reached a turning point. A small operations room in Hyderabad had become the nerve center of the case. A team of senior officers, cybercrime analysts, and forensic experts had been mobilized across districts. Surveillance footage was being reviewed second by second. Every frame held a clue. At exactly 9:40 p.m., on the night of her disappearance, CCTV footage from Samruddhi Toll Plaza captured 4 men loitering near Shalini's red scooter. The video was grainy, with poor lighting, but just one frame gave investigators what they needed: 4 distinct faces. When investigators cross-referenced the mobile numbers, they found that all 4 belonged to individuals with a history of working together in transport and logistics. This further supported the theory that they acted as a group, and coupled with what the police also recovered in the crime scene, a burnt blanket, a melted sandal, and a shattered phone screen, all pointing to a hurried attempt to destroy evidence, likely by individuals familiar with roadside terrain and long-distance travel. No other phones were detected in close or consistent proximity to the victim's last known location. No additional faces appeared in footage, and no other suspects were picked up in the area. Given the match between digital data, physical evidence, and visual identification, the investigation narrowed focus solely to Mahesh Kumar, Vikram Reddy, Sandeep Yadav, and Arjun Thakur. Their prior working relationship, shared background in transport routes, and presence at both the abduction and dump sites eliminated the need to expand the suspect pool. At that stage, there was no digital or physical evidence linking any other individuals, such as friends, family, or outside accomplices, to the crime. The forensic timeline and coordinated movement of the 4 men presented a self-contained chain of events. The investigation remained open to additional leads, but based on initial findings, the evidence pointed directly and exclusively to those 4. Following the identification of 4 suspects from CCTV footage and mobile tower data, police launched a region-wide search. Each suspect was tracked using digital footprints, transport records, and ground-level intelligence gathered from local informants. Mahesh Kumar was located first. His mobile phone had briefly pinged near a transport yard on the outskirts of Hyderabad before being switched off. Surveillance teams traced him to a remote shelter near an abandoned storage facility, where he was found with limited belongings and no active communication devices. Vikram Reddy was apprehended shortly after in the same vicinity. Having traveled with Mahesh previously on trucking routes, he was found hiding alongside him. The two had remained stationary for over 12 hours, possibly waiting for further instructions or an opportunity to flee. Sandeep Yadav was tracked through recent call records that placed him near a fuel station shortly after the night of the incident. A silent alert to local stations helped confirm his movements, leading officers to a small lodge where he had checked in under a false name. Arjun Thakur, the youngest of the group, had remained in close proximity to the others. He was picked up during the same coordinated raid that led to Mahesh and Vikram's arrest, offering no resistance at the time of detention. All four were taken into custody without incident and transferred to a high-security facility for questioning. The arrests were the result of rapid coordination between cybercrime analysts, local police units, and mobile service providers, completing a manhunt that lasted less than 36 hours. When brought in for questioning, the silence cracked quickly. Faced with mounting evidence and pressure, each began to reveal what happened. They had spotted Shalini alone at the toll plaza. They observed her leaving her scooter to visit a nearby salon. In her absence, they deliberately deflated her tire. When she returned and found the flat, Mahesh approached her, offering assistance with forced friendliness. What followed was swift. She was forced into a lorry parked nearby, unable to call for help. Her phone had died. The road was quiet. From there, the vehicle was driven to a secluded stretch of highway. Over the next several hours, Shalini endured an unthinkable ordeal. She was sexually assaulted brutally and repeatedly. Afterward, to silence her forever, she was strangled. The group then wrapped her body in a blanket and set it ablaze near a roadside ditch, hoping to erase every trace of their crime. Despite their efforts, not everything had burned. Her broken phone screen, melted slipper, and parts of the blanket gave investigators a trail to follow. That night, an official statement confirmed what the public already suspected. All four suspects have been arrested and remanded to judicial custody. They face charges including abduction, aggravated sexual assault, murder, and destruction of evidence. And across India, a message rang clear. A crime like this cannot be buried in silence. Not this time. Not again. As news of the arrests spread, shock gave way to public outrage. Across Hyderabad and far beyond, emotions ran high. The crime was no longer just a local tragedy. It had become a national story. Headlines repeated the same chilling facts. A young doctor abducted, sexually assaulted, murdered, and the suspects, all from ordinary working-class backgrounds, had been moving unnoticed through the same public spaces as their victim. Crowds began to gather outside Shadnagar police station where the suspects were briefly held. Banners, candles, and placards filled the streets. What started as a morning vigil quickly swelled into full-scale protests. Anger pulsed through the crowd, not just at the crime, but at a justice system many believed had failed women time and time again. Past cases, still unresolved or delayed, were fresh in memory. This time, people demanded speed, certainty, consequences. Under intense public pressure, the police transferred the four suspects to a high-security facility. Their faces were now known to the country. Their names aired on television alongside images of Shalini, smiling in her lab coat, standing beside her graduation certificate. The contrast was devastating. The investigation accelerated. Forensic teams processed evidence around the clock. Shalini's DNA was matched to items recovered from the crime scene. Call records and tower locations were analyzed, aligning with the suspect's confessions and the movement of the lorry. To show commitment, the state government announced the establishment of a fast-track court dedicated to the case. It was a move welcomed by the public, but it did little to quiet the storm. On television and social media, debates intensified. Some called for capital punishment. Others questioned the system's ability to deliver real justice at all. The conversation had outgrown the courtroom. It was now a national reckoning. In Warangal, the Mehra family stayed out of the spotlight. Media crews lined their street, but no one spoke to the press. The loss had silenced their home. Grief hung heavy, private and profound. Back in Hyderabad, the case file grew thicker by the hour. Investigators had what they needed: evidence, confessions, and motive. Public demand had become deafening. But just as the system moved toward a trial, the case would soon take an unexpected and controversial turn. One that would spark new headlines, new outrage, and a wave of questions that no one was prepared for, and the promise of justice for a woman who never came home. In the early hours of December 6, 2019, a police convoy departed from the high-security detention facility in Hyderabad, transporting the 4 accused in Shalini Mehra's case to the outskirts of Shadnagar. The location was a barren, open field not far from the highway, close to where Shalini's body had been discovered just days earlier. The purpose of the journey, according to police reports, was part of an official crime scene reconstruction. Investigators sought to retrace the events of the night of the crime, using the suspect's own accounts to piece together the timeline with physical locations. The aim was to clarify inconsistencies, verify confessions, and reinforce the charges with spatial evidence. The team on site included senior officers, armed personnel, and forensic documentation units. The suspects were uncuffed at the scene as per standard procedure during such reconstructions, to allow them to demonstrate their movements and actions. However, what followed was not part of the plan. Shortly after arrival, police claimed that the suspects attempted to flee. In the confusion, officers alleged that one or more suspects grabbed firearms from the police. Chaos ensued. In the low visibility before dawn, shots were fired. All 4 accused were killed on the spot. The announcement of their deaths spread rapidly. News channels picked up the story within the hour. What had begun as a routine investigative procedure had now turned into a fatal confrontation. Public response was immediate and overwhelming. In many parts of Hyderabad and across the country, people took to the streets in celebration. Fireworks lit up the sky. Crowds gathered outside police stations, clapping and chanting. For a large section of the public, this outcome symbolized a form of instant justice, something they felt the courts had failed to deliver in similar cases before. But the event also drew criticism. Legal scholars, human rights organizations, and former law enforcement officials voiced concern over the official version of events. Questions were raised about the planning and supervision of the reconstruction, the presence or absence of video evidence, and whether the suspects' deaths had been preventable. The lack of body camera footage, the location of the operation, and the timing, taking place under cover of darkness, added to the skepticism. Observers noted that with the accused now dead, no formal trial would take place. The possibility of learning deeper truths, uncovering systemic failures, or assigning institutional accountability had effectively ended. In response to mounting public debate and legal petitions, the Supreme Court of India and the Telangana state government appointed a judicial inquiry commission headed by a retired judge. The commission was tasked with examining whether the events leading to the encounter aligned with lawful police procedure or constituted an extrajudicial act, and also review operational protocol, weapons handling, and the justification for lethal force. Meanwhile, Dr. Shalini Mehra's family remained out of public view. In the days following the encounter, they made no official comment. Neighbors described their household as quiet, mourning in solitude. For them, the deaths may have brought a measure of closure, but not necessarily peace. The commission's work unfolded quietly, away from public view. Over the course of several months, testimonies were recorded from officers involved in the operation, forensic evidence was reanalyzed, and the entire chain of events was reconstructed. The weapons used during the incident were examined, along with bullet trajectories, post-mortem reports, and environmental data from the site of the encounter. Attention was given to procedural adherence. The commission sought to understand whether the suspects were under appropriate custody protocols, whether adequate safety measures were followed during the alleged escape attempt, and whether lethal force was the only available option. The terrain where the encounter occurred, open, uneven land outside city limits, was scrutinized for its suitability as a location for crime scene reconstruction. Eventually, the commission submitted its report. Its findings contradicted the initial narrative. Based on forensic evidence, the positioning of the bodies, and the angle of injuries, the commission concluded that the deaths were not the result of a spontaneous escape or self-defense shooting. Instead, it found credible grounds to believe the encounter was staged. The report recommended criminal prosecution against 10 police officers, citing custodial death, procedural violations, and potential fabrication of evidence. The panel noted that the principles of justice could not be compromised, even when public sentiment demanded swift retribution. It emphasized that due process, transparency, and accountability remained cornerstones of any lawful society. The release of the report reignited debate across media platforms. While some continued to defend the police action as necessary in light of the crime's brutality, others viewed the commission's findings as a sobering reminder of the importance of judicial oversight. Civil rights groups called for immediate action based on the recommendations, warning that failure to do so would set a dangerous precedent. Legal experts noted that while the initial investigation into Shalini's death had been thorough, the extrajudicial nature of the encounter ultimately deprived the country of a lawful resolution. A trial could have exposed institutional gaps, interrogated systemic negligence, and documented lessons for future prevention. That opportunity was lost the moment justice was delivered outside the bounds of court. The Mera family, once again at the center of the nation's attention, chose silence. Protected by police and surrounded by extended relatives, they avoided public statements. Their loss remained unchanged. Whether through trial or encounter, their daughter was gone. The details of how the suspects died brought little relief. In legal terms, the case had concluded. But ethically and institutionally, its echoes were far from over. The death of Shalini Mera had revealed more than a heinous crime. It had exposed a fragile justice system caught between public expectation and legal responsibility. And in doing so, it left behind a critical question that the nation would continue to confront. Can justice ever be served if the law is not followed to the end? With the deaths of the 4 accused and the conclusion of the judicial inquiry, public attention gradually shifted. The outrage that had once gripped the nation began to fade from the headlines. Yet the aftermath of Dr. Shalini Mera's case continued to influence conversations across the country. What began as a single act of violence had evolved into a broader examination of women's safety, policing standards, and the fragile balance between justice and due process. Though the media cycle moved on, the case left an imprint on institutions, policy discussions, and public consciousness. In several states, local governments initiated reviews of safety protocols for women. Surveillance systems were expanded in urban centers. Proposals for panic alert features in public transportation gained traction. The case had exposed vulnerabilities, especially for women traveling alone at night, and prompted renewed attention to structural safeguards. Emergency response mechanisms also came under scrutiny. Timelines, call routing efficiency, and law enforcement response times were reviewed. New training modules were introduced in select districts, emphasizing sensitivity in handling gender-based crimes. Conversations around fast-track courts resurfaced. Although such courts had existed in theory, the case brought urgency to their implementation. Policymakers began exploring ways to reduce procedural delays while still ensuring due process. Legal experts, however, cautioned against allowing speed to overshadow fairness, a balance not easily achieved in emotionally charged cases. Outside the legal realm, advocacy groups, NGOs, and educational institutions organized awareness campaigns. Workshops on consent, safety, and social accountability were introduced in colleges and offices. The aim was prevention, ensuring fewer women would face what Shalini had endured. But as systems moved forward, the Mera family remained in place. The absence of a trial meant there were no court proceedings to attend. Shalini's room stayed untouched, her textbooks, stethoscope, and belongings preserved as they had been, a silent tribute to a life interrupted. If this story moved you, disturbed you, or opened your eyes, subscribe to our channel for more real-life crime documentaries and fictional stories inspired by true events. We uncover the darkest corners of human nature so you can be more aware, more informed, and maybe even safer. Until next time, stay sharp, stay safe, and never ignore the feeling that something just isn't right.
Hello and welcome. Citizens of Hyderabad are horrified, shocked with the developments that have happened over the last 48 hours. A 26-year-old veterinary doctor who went missing on Wednesday night, her body was recovered early morning of Thursday, and subsequently the police has acted fast and been able to take into their custody 4 suspects who they believe had sexually assaulted the young woman and had also murdered her.